All right, welcome into Ethan Skolnick Starting 9 here on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. If I look tired, it's because I am. I just came back from Chicago and didn't make the game to Toronto, but we will cover all of that and more here today. We're just going to take questions today. That's it, okay? So no guests, no nothing. I haven't even combed my hair. I just woke up to all of you guys, all right? So we're going to do this today as we go forward. We're going to do this for like the next 15 or 20 minutes. Before we do want to mention sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network is our friends over at Salus. GetSalus.com. That's where you go. Here's the box. The packets are inside. This is the stuff you need if you're an endurance athlete. You need those electrolytes, right? You don't want to just pound all that Gatorade, all that Powerade. So go to getsalus.com. You get 10% off with our product code 5RSN. You can get it all over the country, okay? We know we have viewers here. Heat fans are all over the country, so not just here in South Florida. So go to getsalus.com. Again, replace your electrolytes in a healthy way. You'll be able to run longer, swim longer, play tennis longer, do other things longer. I'm not going to actually say that. But getsalus.com. Use the code 5RSN. This is number 5RSN. 10% off. And again, it's sugar-free. It's healthy. Lay off of the Gatorade, all right? You have a little bit, but this stuff is better. You don't need as much. And again, you'll be able to finish the race. All right, let's get to it here today. The Miami Heat coming off a 3-0 road trip, which, I mean, that was much better than expectations. I think we all said on 5 on the floor, 2-1, you would take it. You're going against 3 playoff teams, 3 hostile environments. You didn't know if you'd had everybody healthy, although you did finally for the game against Chicago. And then, of course, not just the players, but even the coach were not able to participate in Toronto. You fall behind by 13 in Toronto in the first half. Max Strus gives you 23 in the second half. Victor Oladipo gives you plus 20 off the bench, including 6 threes and a dunk from basically the arc. And you get enough from Bam, you get enough from Kyle, you get enough from others to finish it out. Tyler Hero with a near triple-double. Some of the stuff at the end was a little bit shaky. This late game stuff with the Heat still scares me. It just seems like, I don't know, they go brain dead in certain situations. I mean, Tyler throwing the ball off his backboard. You don't really want to see that in a playoff game. But they survived it, and they're going to be the number 1 seed. I think that's where we're headed. They have, now, what is it, a 2-game lead? Well, I think it's 1.5 over Boston, 2 over the others, or 2 and 2.5. But the reality is they're going to be the 1 seed. I mean, they control their destiny here. They've got a last game against Orlando, this is not the Magic that everybody used to worry about, and the Heat would struggle up there. There's no Vucevic, not that he plays well against the Heat these days anyway. There's no Fournier. Nobody's going to hurt you on that team. I feel comfortable saying that. They're just going into the lottery. They're playing for lottery balls. So you figure you're going to win that one no matter who you use. So it just comes down to these 2 games against Atlanta and Charlotte, and you just need one of them. That's it. You just need one. Although you can dictate a little bit what happens in the play-in, because both of those teams are in the play-in, and you can kind of dictate where the Nets fall before the play-in if you want to. So let's just get to the questions here. We're just going to do this going forward. I will answer all of your questions. I will mention, if you mention that you're a subscriber to Off the Floor, I'll answer your question first, okay? Or maybe I'll answer it better. But that is our premium subscription service. It's $3.05 a month, or you can try it out for a week. And if you have questions about it, just check out our Twitter feed at 5 Reasons Sports. We post it all the time. But that's me, Alex, Brady, and Greg. And we give you stuff that we don't give you yet on Twitter or here or on the podcast. We may get to it eventually, but it's going to go there first. Okay, so that's the way that we've been doing things these days. All right, Manny, we got producer Manny Chang is going to load up the questions. Let's get to it. We'll get back to that other one here in a second. Hey, Ethan, I know we'll most likely be the 1 seed, but do we really still think we can beat the Nets, JP? I addressed this last night on the podcast, and I don't understand this irrational fear of the Nets. Look, is this the ideal first-round opponent? No. Okay? I mean, of course not. I went through it last night. I mean, the Big 3 Heat played 4 teams in the first round that couldn't threaten them. Okay, and that's typically the way it goes. The 8 seed typically can't threaten you because the 8 seed is typically, a 500 team with kind of a borderline number 1 guy, definitely not a real number 2 guy behind the number 1 guy, okay, like you have in KD and Kyrie, who could be a number 1 on another team. And if you look at who the Heat played those 4 years, it was Philadelphia the first year, which had like a nice collection of players. Andre Iguodala was probably their best player, fairly close to his prime. Drew Holiday, very young. Thad Young was a good player. He's still playing now, but he was not a superstar. I mean, they had Lou Williams. They had a quality team, but they weren't going to beat you in the first round. The Heat handled them in 5. The second year, they played a Knicks team that featured Carmelo and Stoudemire. Stoudemire busted a fire extinguisher. Everybody in the Knicks blew out their knees. Other than the Knicks hype that year, you knew you weren't losing to the Knicks with the big 3, okay? That was the second year. I always forget the order here, but I believe it was Milwaukee the third year and Charlotte the fourth year. And Milwaukee was a sweep, okay? At that point, they traded for J.J. Redick, but their best players were Monte Ellis and Brandon Jennings. That was a sweep. They didn't even play Dwayne in Game 4. And then in the fourth year, you're playing a Charlotte team where Al Jefferson was their best player, and he got hurt during the series. So I get it. Like, that's what you usually get in the first round. Like, in the West, that's what the number 1 seed, Phoenix, is likely going to get in the first round. They're probably not going to get the Lakers. They're going to get, I mean, boy, the Lakers look. I mean, they may get like a Spurs team that's very ordinary, okay? Or they're going to get, a Clippers team might be a little bit more dangerous with Paul George. But long-winded way of answering this question is, it's not ideal, but the Nets have played, pretty much to a 500 level, even with Kyrie and KD playing recently. Kyrie hasn't even been that good since he got cleared. And I understand what they did to the Heat last time, but the Heat won the first 3 games against them this season, and Bam typically plays well against them. I think this is a rational fear. Would it be a more compelling, more competitive series? Would there be more media? Would a lot of probably 3/4 of people at ESPN would pick the Nets? I'm picking the Heat in 6. Okay, that's where I'm at. All right, go ahead. What else we got? What do you think will happen to PJ come playoff time next season? That's an interesting question. I think during playoff games, they're going to enter with him in roughly the same role that he's been in during the season, because honestly, the way they've used him during the season was the way they envisioned using him during the playoffs. I don't know that they necessarily wanted to use him as much during the regular season as they have. But I think with PJ, it's going to come down to one thing. Is he making the corner 3 or not? And I don't mean at the 50% rate that he was making it the first half of the season, but at least a 35% rate. Because lately, and it's come back a little bit, but lately it's been at like a 19 or 20% rate. That's a problem, because as much as he gives you in other areas, he will be left open in that spot, and that makes it difficult to close with him. I think he's going to start. But if he wants to close, instead of, say, maybe Jimmy at the 4, maybe Caleb at times at the 4, maybe even Markieff Morris on occasion if he's making his mid-range shot, if he's going to be a closer, he has to make that look, because I was at the Chicago game. I was sitting baseline, and I'm just watching the Bulls don't defend, okay? But the way that the Bulls were defending, the corner 3 was open for the Heat all the time. PJ is going to be in that spot in a lot of occasions. He's got to make that shot. As far as next season goes, they want to retain him. He's got a 2-year deal. I would anticipate that there's an opt-out, I believe, but I would anticipate that they retain him. What do we got next? Nope, not that one. Okay, here we go from Crypta. Does Depot's great game against Toronto change your mind about whether he should be used in the playoffs? Okay, I never said he shouldn't be used in the playoffs. I want to be clear on that. I said he wouldn't enter the playoffs in the rotation. That's a different thing. A lot of things happen in the playoffs, okay? I think yesterday was really important because 2 things. One, it's huge for Depot's confidence. It just is, okay? And look, he was ebbing and flowing. You could see with the Instagram posts, remember me and all that sort of stuff. Like, he needed some positive validation, and he got it. So that was huge. But also, I think it will increase his teammates' confidence in him. They like him. They want him to succeed. You can see it, okay? They were extremely happy for him last night. But I can tell you that Eric Spoelstra spoke to the leaders on the team, and that's Lowry, Jimmy, and Bam, about the rotation changes. And one of the things that was discussed was going back to Gabe, okay? So I think, there was a little bit of a confidence deficit from the team towards Oladipo, simply because it's really hard to come back at this stage of the season from everything he's coming back from. And I'm not just talking about the injury, but I'm just talking about lack of playing. So I think yesterday mattered. But the playoffs, we have seen, go back to 2014 when Spoelstra had to roll out Michael Beasley in the last game against the Spurs, or 2011, okay, the finals, known as the LeBron finals, right? But in the last game, he went with Eddie House, who hadn't been in the rotation. There will be opportunities during the playoffs, injuries, suspensions, ineffectiveness for guys to step in. So I think what Oladipo did last night was he made himself an option. He made himself an option for Eric going forward. And there may be certain series where his rim pressure, his ball pressure on defense is useful. So I wouldn't put him ahead of Vincent in the rotation right now, or ahead of the others like Martin and etc., or Robinson, who I know we're going to discuss. But I think he definitely, his number could be called now. I think it's more likely than it was before last night. Okay, what's next? Do you think Bam can still win DPOY over Smart? You know what's funny about that? I don't. And because here's why, all right? The national media looks for reasons to ignore the Heat. I don't know why, all right? I mean, we've talked about this many times. I don't know if it's jealousy. I don't know if they don't think Miami's a real sports town. I don't know, all right? I don't know if it's because their operations are all based now. The big network that sets the agenda on everything, okay, their operations are based in the Northeast and Los Angeles and not here, even though I can tell you that everybody I know from up there wants the finals to be here. Okay, it's just the way it is. But they don't care about the Heat otherwise. Same as with the Dolphins. They only care about the Dolphins when they can go after Tua. But I think Bam was getting a little bit of buzz, and then the one bad week that the Heat had gave an excuse for everybody to ignore them again. So my thing is, I mean, you haven't heard anything about him since the 3-game winning streak, right? We heard a lot about the sideline fight, but nothing about them coming out of it. So I think the buzz I think if Boston finishes in the top 3, which it looks like is going to happen, I think Marcus Smart is more likely. I think what's happened with Utah lately has probably sunk Rudy's candidacy, although there are so many lazy voters, okay, that they may just vote for him anyway. They may have decided 3-4 weeks ago. The voting process is flawed. I don't really know how you fix it, but I would bet against Bam winning. And here's the other thing. Voters sometimes make a decision that they don't want to give too many awards to one team. Hero's going to win 6th Man of the Year. I think that's going to be the Heat Award this year. Okay, Manny, go ahead. I just tweeted about this, Aaron. Hey, Ethan, what's your feeling about Anthony Davis using the injury excuse? You know why I think he used it? Because the media has validated that for them this year. This whole season, it is. I just got to say it. It's pathetic. I don't care if they're pissed at me or not. What the NBA has done this year in concert with their television partners, okay, and it is in concert, is sad. All right, it's just sad. Like, they're going to complain that the ratings are not good when we get to the conference finals, and it's Miami, Milwaukee, and Phoenix, Memphis, okay, which would be I would put the odds on those two things happening. And they're going to complain that the ratings are bad, and they're going to say, well, see, nobody wants to watch these teams. That's not it. That's not it. It's not that nobody wants to watch them. It's that nobody's covered them the whole damn year. If you're a casual fan, okay, I don't mean that in the negative sense. I mean, you're somebody who's not following it like the people watching this show are following it, or following Twitter, or some of us in the media. If you're a casual fan, if you tune in for the playoffs just because you're interested in watching basketball and you want to see some personalities, like literally, you have not seen some of these teams the whole year on national media, okay? Whether it's the games being covered or the analysis on television, you haven't seen them. That's why local networks like this exist, right? So, then you're going to complain the ratings are bad. Well, the ratings are bad because nobody got attached to any of these teams or these personalities. Like, the casual NBA fan is not really familiar with Devin Booker or maybe John Morant at this stage a little bit, okay? But they don't know what the Heat have gone through this year or anything like that to get to where they are. So the national media, by propping up the Knicks and the Lakers, okay, both of whom aren't going to make the play-in, it looks like, with the Lakers being the second one, or the Nets, okay, they have done a disservice to NBA fans. So how does that play into Anthony Davis's comments? Well, they all watch this crap, okay? I can tell you from being in locker rooms, all right? They've watched the ESPN, the Undisputed, all the rest of this, and these people have been making excuses for them all year instead of putting a spotlight on what a team like the Heat or Milwaukee, which didn't have its top 3 for a period of time this season, okay, or Memphis being 20-2 without John Morant. I mean, how can Anthony Davis sit up there seriously when he's usually the injury problem, okay? Kendrick Nunn, okay, when he's the injury problem, all right, for the most part, because LeBron would fight through stuff if Anthony Davis was playing, because LeBron would think he had a legitimate chance to win a championship. He knows he doesn't, right? And I don't think LeBron at this stage wants to embarrass himself by losing in the first game of the play-in. So, like, how does Anthony Davis sit up there and say this when literally the Memphis Grizzlies have been without their MVP candidate for 22 games this year? Forget the Heat. And they've won 20 of them. And meanwhile, on the Heat side, we know what they've been through. None of their top 4 players are top 5 in games for them this season. What does that tell you? It's pathetic, honestly. And it's a culture of losing that's been established there. And apparently, they were the real bubble frauds, if you look back at it. All right, let's get to that. Anthony Davis has never shot that well and never will again. Holland, Ethan, what actually happened to Spo? Do we know when he'll be back? I would anticipate he would be back Tuesday. I will say that I was actually with Spoelstra walking towards the bus in Chicago. So I'm going to go get myself a test today just to be safe. But I've heard he's asymptomatic. So that's all I know about it. As far as when he gets through the protocols and all that, that's not entirely clear. I don't really know, honestly. They've changed the protocols so many times that I don't really know what they are right now, particularly for coaches. I heard that there were others on the support staff that tested positive. I can tell you that, one of the reasons I didn't go to Toronto and Ira and Anthony didn't go to Toronto was because we didn't want to deal with the testing protocols up there. Like if you ended up, and then what do we do? We don't have the team backing and playing and all the rest of this to get us back. Like would have been a big pain in the ass. So basically, that Toronto game was kind of circled on the calendar as one that might be problematic for the team, that somebody might test positive. And it turned out, from what I heard, that Eric did. But I hear he's fine. So hopefully that's the case. All right, what do we got next? What's next for Tyler to elevate his game? That's an interesting question. John Jablanca, who we follow, posted some really fascinating stats, which Alex talked about yesterday on the podcast, which is his shot profile this year, in terms of shot creation and all that, is he's like in the 98th percentile right now. But his shot difficulty, he's like in the bottom 5 percentile. Like he's taking really difficult shots. He's a tough shot maker. Okay. And look, there have been many of those who've had success for a long time in the NBA. But I think the next step, there are 2 steps for him. His handle's gotten a little tighter. We've seen at the end of games, though, there can be mistakes. There were last night. But I think the biggest thing for him that they'll work on this offseason is getting him easier looks. Okay. I feel like that's the next evolution, is his efficiency. Is that I think as this team transitions more and more from Jimmy to him, in terms of the way that they run the offense, and maybe again away from sort of the Bam, Duncan, DHOs and all that you will see them get easier looks for Tyler. More curls for him. He's very, very comfortable with the step back now and off the bounce. He's very, very comfortable with the floater. This is another of my irritations with the national media when he's back to Bubble Hero. He is completely unrecognizable to Bubble Hero. I mean, he has grown so much. Okay. Last year was more similar to Bubble Hero. That was the problem. He didn't grow last year. They gave him a lot on his plate and he didn't grow, and he had the short rest and all the rest of that. This year, he's way up there in terms of, I watch him go through his pregame workouts because he's always on the court. And there is a plan with it. He's dedicated to it. And, I had heard some things. They were uncomfortable with his work ethic last season. We reported it. It wasn't his work ethic on the floor. It was some other stuff. It was getting in the gym. But he's been terrific this year. And he will there is another level to Tyler Hero he's going to get to. All right, I'm going to take a couple more questions. Who's Kendrick Nunn? I like Kendrick. But I'm going to get to this question in a second. Hold the question. I will get to the old Devo question. I do want to mention one more sponsor here. Our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. Check them out on Instagram at All Pro Construction Builders. If you live in South Florida, or even if you live in Louisiana or some other spots, Texas, hurricane season around the corner, but they only service South Florida. So just reach out to them there. They service Miami-Dade, Monroe, and also Broward County. They use locally made products, American made. So make sure you're protecting your home or your business. They specialize in the impact windows and doors for residential and commercial properties. If you're a business owner and you want to get your place, want to make sure your place is correctly protected, boarded up, all the rest of this the right way, you're not throwing shutters up at the last minute, go to All Pro Construction Builders. Okay, they are a licensed and certified insured general contractor, state certified. And again, they service those 3 counties, and they're family owned and operated. So reach out to our guy, Danny. You'll talk to him directly. He's a huge Miami Heat fan as well. I go back and forth with him on text all the time. Danny at 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. If you mention 5 Reasons, you'll get a 10% discount off your entire order. Again, they do the renovations for you too. If you need that, they'll make sure you stay within code and all of that important stuff. So go to All Pro Construction Builders on Instagram. They're going to have their new website up here soon. All right, let's roll with some more questions here for the last 5 minutes before we go. How did you rate Lowry's homecoming tribute? They did it right. I have always said Toronto is a top 5. It was one of my top 5 travel spots in the NBA. It's just a great city. But, I mean, when you're not dealing with COVID protocols. But also, it's a great, great fan base. I mean, that playoff series I covered there in 2016 when Kyle was on the other side was a lot of fun. They really care about the Raptors. Like that's the country's team. If you're not just an NHL fan up there, if you're not just a hockey fan, that is your team. I thought they did it absolutely right. I thought he handled it right, and he played well. That was the other thing. Like I know Van Vliet got off early, but like he played well, which was really positive. That was very cool. I was there for Bosch's return there. Not quite the same tribute when Chris was doing the wrestling move to get more booze there. But the way that Kyle left, I think they were a little bit more pleased with that than the way that Bosch left. Plus, you win a championship, that's kind of forever. All right, we got let's get the 3 more here. Sabas, could you realistically see the Heat eventually going after Donovan Mitchell? The answer, I could realistically see Pat Riley always going after a top 15 player. It does look like that's a mess. The stats that came out that Donovan averages not 2 assists per game. You got the schmutz, we got the guts. That's our friends over at Water Cleanup in Florida. Check them out as well. Not 2 assists a game. He's averaging 2 passes a game to Rudy Gobert. People complain about Butler not passing to Bam enough. 2 passes a game. So I do think it's going to implode if they lose in the first round, which is possible. Some of it, it's. I mean, if Dallas finishes in the 3rd seed, Golden State's in the 4. Golden State Utah series, I don't know. I mean, Golden State hasn't played that well the second half of the season, but again, they're getting Steph back, so we'll see what he looks like. So, and a young OG, I'll get to that in a second. But basically, like if you look at Utah's situation, I mean, what are they building around then? Because the problem for a team like Utah is, and I know Dwayne's out there and all that. Would Pat inquire? Of course. Is Pat going to trade Tyler Hero for him? He would, I think. Would it? I mean, what other pieces would you have to send to make the salaries work? That's another question. But here's the thing about a place like Utah. And this is why Portland has always hung on to Dame. Like, when you trade a superstar or borderline superstar in a market like that, how do you get the next one? You're not getting him in free agency, right? Like, look at OKC. Like, they had 3 superstars, right? Okay, 3. They drafted 3 in successive years. But now it's like, it's not like someone's going there to fill the void. They got Paul George briefly in a trade, and he left. So you have to then redraft all of them. Do they want to do that in Utah? Do they want to be bad for the next 5-6 years? I don't know. I mean, Sacramento has been bad for almost 2 decades. And that's another of those markets. So, I mean, I think they're going to be more reluctant to trade him. I think they'll trade Rudy. And then I think they'll try to build a different way around Donovan, but we'll see. I mean, trading Rudy might be enough to satisfy Donovan. Let's get to that. The question about Oladipo's presser. Look, it's complicated with him. I think in a lot of, they've been very upfront with him. I can tell you that. He's had many conversations with Pat. I know that they would like to retain him beyond this year. I give him credit for taking the minimum contract, but let's just be honest. Like, it wasn't working. Like, when they reinserted him and Morris into the rotation, and it's not just me saying it. I mean, literally, I had a side conversation with Eric Spoelstra about this up in Chicago. It wasn't working. I mean, they needed to go back to what was working, okay? And the young guys, the minimum guys who played so well this season. but it doesn't mean that there won't be a role for him going forward. So I understand some frustration on his part. I don't think it's of the level of his frustration like with the contract in Indiana or anything like that. They want him to succeed. They do. It's just that this is a crowded roster, and his game has to fit with the right guys. You know, if Jimmy was out there last night, would Oladipo have gone off the way he went? I don't know. Last night, to his credit, he performed at a very high level. All right, let's two more. If we've got two more. We don't have two more? Look at that. Nobody wants to talk to me this morning. All right, check out All Pro Construction Build. Or Manny may be preoccupied at the moment. All right, we thank you for all the questions. You know what? I want to do something. I never do this. Go to the comments. Okay, here we go. We'll go because he might be tied up right now. All right, let's see here. This comes in from Alan. There we go. Annoying to see Bam not attack Boucher or Thad Young one-on-one. Kyle got to get aggressive Bam out of him. Yes, we've talked about this all year too, that Kyle does the thing where he'll pass the ball into Bam and then he'll scram. Right? It's the Bam and scram. He just gets the hell out of the way so that he forces Bam to be aggressive. I don't think it's going to be innate for Bam at this point. It is just not innate for him to be that kind of alpha. He has to kind of be pushed into it. And I do know that this is one of the things that's going to irritate Heat fans in the playoffs if he has a favorable matchup and he doesn't exploit it. I don't know that he's going to have as many of those favorable matchups. I mean, we'll see who they play in the first round. If they're playing, like, let's say they're playing Charlotte, okay, and he's got Plumlee. That's going to irritate the hell out of Heat fans if he doesn't attack him. For some reason, he will not. He has not, okay, on a lot of occasions. Atlanta, Clint Capella is a good defender, all right? But Bam's quicker than him. Bam can go after him. So I feel like there's certain matchups. I mean, against the Nets, if he's not aggressive against the Nets, they're going to lose that series because he is the trump card against the Nets. All right. So it depends series to series. Against Embiid, he's going to have to make Embiid work if he faces him. Boston situation, he can't be outplayed by Daniel Tice. Okay, now that Rob Williams is not in there, or may not be in there by a second round series. Bam is in many ways their ceiling. We all have said that, but it is not going to be innate with him. He's going to have to be pushed and prodded to try to act like a number one or a number two at this stage of his career. I think we've all accepted that. Remember, Bam before the season, I'm going to take 1-3 per game. I don't think he's taken 1-3 all season. It's just. He's just really, really good at the things he does, and getting him to step out of that comfort zone sometimes is a little bit more challenging. I will take one more here. If you got one more, Manny, here we go. Holland. Tyler seems to be shrinking versus tougher, more physical defenders. They see him needing another 12 to 15 pound of muscle to dominate more as guys are pushing around. Most of the work this offseason was on his legs. And I feel like you've seen the effects of that. His ability to finish in the lane, I think, is mostly due to that. The step back jumpers, him not getting tired at the end of games, I think that's all been positive. I do think you'll see him grow more and more into his body here as we go forward. He's 20. What is he, 22 now? There's time. I think that is, again, another step. I think that the most promising thing this year is you just see the skill level. The skill level with him is extraordinarily high. It just really is. And ultimately, if the skill level is high, you find ways around physical deficiencies. So I think that's something they'll work on. All right, I'll get to this one from Spectre, and then we'll go. I see a quick 8 to 9 man rotation for the playoffs. Who makes it? I still believe that the rotation is going to be, as Eric Spoelstra says, the rotation is the rotation. I think they're going to start the playoffs now that Strus has settled in and has played well with Lowry, Strus, Butler, Tucker, and Bam. I think Dedmon has solidified his spot as the backup backup 5 against most opponents. Tyler Hero, obviously. Then it starts to get a little bit more kind of questionable. I think there are 3 guys for 2 spots. I think it's Robinson, Vincent, and Martin. I think 3 guys for 2 spots. My guess right now is Robinson will get the nod early for space and also somewhat out of respect. I think it comes down to Vincent or Martin. And I hate to say this. I think we were discussing this up in Chicago, a bunch of us. I think it's probably Caleb who may be on the outs, not the outs, but the odd man out at the very beginning for the extra ball handling. but I could see it go the other direction. I think it ultimately comes down to a Vincent or Martin decision at the beginning. Beyond that, I think you could see if Caleb is making an occasional three, then I think you could see Duncan go out of the rotation. Appreciate all of the comments, and I'm looking at them because I want to get to some of these on our podcast feed and other places. Also, check out Off the Floor. Thanks, as always. That's true. He's forced to be the other guy on any other roster. I would agree with that. All right. Thanks to Manny for producing. Thanks to our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders. And also getsalas.com. Use the code 5RSN. PrizePicks.com. Use the code 5FIVE.